Okay, good evening, everyone. Just like to call our regular meeting of the City of Thousand Oaks Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. We'll go ahead and jump into item 3, which is just our roll call. So, Mrs. Vasquez, please call the roll.
Commissioner Callahan,
Present.
Commissioner Amell,
Present.
Commissioner Orozco,
Present.
Vice Chair Hayek,
Present.
Chair Pletcher.
Present. Thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and move on to item 4, which is our election of chair. Our term expires January 2025, so 1 year. Basically, just for members of the public, we're going to go around, make nominations, and I'll open it up to commissioners for nominations. Sir.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Victor Hayek for chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? Okay. Hearing none, believe we need to get a vote on this, correct? Mrs. Vasquez, please call the vote.
Commissioner Amell,
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Orozco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hayek,
Yes.
Chair Pletcher.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Congratulations. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I look forward to a productive year for the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee. Our next order of business, election of a vice chair, term expiring January 2025. And I'll open to the floor for any nominations. Commissioner Pletcher?
Thank you, Chair Hayek. I'd like to nominate Commissioner Immel for vice chair.
Okay, we have a nomination. Any other nominations? Commissioner Orozco?
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Callahan.
Okay. Any other nominations? All right, we have 2 nominations. You have to walk me through. We vote one at a time based on the nominations, or?
Yeah, I would, with either the first, well, it doesn't matter. Someone needs to make a motion to appoint one or the other and have a vote. And if that passes, then we're done. If it doesn't pass, then we move on to the next.
Okay. All right. So we have 2 nominations. Commissioner. Go ahead.
So, Council, can one of the commissioners make a motion as to proceed on the vote for one of the nominations first?
Yeah, so at this time we need a motion. So someone needs to make a motion to appoint somebody to vice chair, and then we'll vote on that.
So,
Unless there's a substitute motion.
yeah, Chair, would you mind? So I would like to make a motion to appoint Commissioner Callahan as vice chair.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to appoint Commissioner Callahan as vice chair. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Amell,
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Roscoe,
Yes.
Chair Hayek,
Yes.
and Commissioner Pletcher.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Congratulations.
You can just grab tape and it's fine.
Thank you. I will move on to number 6, public comments. Ms. Vasquez, please make the public comments announcement.
Okay. This is the time and place for public comments. Registration for public comments is available for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for a specific agenda item shall be called and heard during that specific item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. We have one individual online that has requested to speak. And pursuant to Traffic Commission standards, public comment speakers are allowed 3 minutes for the record. No written statements have been submitted. And also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting. And please remember to mute your microphones when you are not speaking.
Thank you. First speaker, Mr. Scott Levin. Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, the online speaker is Lynn Burdick. Are we ready for her?
Yes.
Okay, give me just a second. Lynn, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Lynn. Go ahead and state your name and community for the record.
Sure. My name's Lynn Burdick, and I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. In reading over the agenda and meeting documents, I see that one of the criteria for determining if a stop sign is warranted is the lack of traffic collision history. I've also been told by the city representative that adapting to new laws, traffic laws, and adding stop signs is too expensive and time-consuming to maintain. I find this type of decision-making criteria reckless care for the safety of our residents, workers, and visitors unacceptable. It takes a serious or even a deadly incident to get the city's attention to do something when prevention should have been the objective, not reaction. If death occurs, there's no do-over. It signals to me that the city we love and care for doesn't care about us. The state just passed a law effective on January 1st, 2024, AB 413, which states it's unlawful to park within 20 feet of a marked or unmarked crosswalk. I'm asking the city to install no parking signs and painted curb on one intersection that is in constant violation of this new law. The city representative has told me that it's up to me to basically police my own street and neighborhood. It's up to me to call the sheriff to report violation. It takes valued resources of the sheriff's time to deal with daily and hourly violations when simple solution to install no parking sign and paint or painted curb. I note that the agenda under future agenda items, the topic of AB 413. I'm still waiting for a solution to our neighborhood's request for the intersection of Los Padres and Rolling Oaks Drive. Please note that the law indicates 20 feet, not 8 feet, as part of your evaluation on whether to allow for a stop sign. How does the new law affect this 8 feet? As a crosswalk would be intended if a stop sign was put in place. I'm looking to the city to help find a solution and not wait until someone dies because it costs too much or it takes too much time to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Do we have any more speakers?
No more speakers.
Are there any responses from staff to the public speaker comments?
Yes, I can address the comments, particularly related to AB 413, which is a new state law requiring or a regulation for 2024. If you're within 20 feet of a crosswalk, it essentially becomes a no parking zone. It's unmarked. This in the vehicle code, it says basically that during 2024, vehicles will receive warnings by the police if they're parked within 20 feet of a crosswalk, unless it's marked with a either with a sign or curb markings to indicate it's a no parking zone. So since we have hundreds of intersections in the city, we're trying to determine what's the best approach as to implement this new state law, and we're probably also going to be turning to other agencies and finding out how they're going to tackle this issue. So we place it on the work program for the Traffic Commission. We're going to come back after discussing this with our police department, probably also talk to our city attorney's office as well, and update the Traffic Commission as far as how we're going to approach this. We have not provided citizens any direction on how they should report any violations or suspected violations. So at this point, we're still trying to come to a conclusion on this matter. So we'll talk about this at a future meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. And just for the speaker, just so they're aware, is there any timeline on when this will come back?
We're probably looking at maybe within a couple months or so.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to number 7, summary notes from our September 27, 2023 meeting. Are there any comments on the summary notes? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 8, engineers reports. May we please request the engineering associate Bradley, is it Acart, to present our first engineers report, which is an action item.
Thank you, Chair Hayek, and good evening, everyone. Sorry. My name is Bradley Ackert, and I work in the Traffic Division of Public Works. Today, I'm going to be discussing the Hendricks Avenue speed hump petition. I'd like to start by showing a location map to help you get your bearings. This petition zone is on Hendricks Avenue between Gainsborough Road and Jans Road, which is approximately 5/8 of a mile long. I want to give you an idea of the street profile of Hendricks Avenue. Hendricks Avenue is a typical residential street that is 40 feet wide with a speed limit of 25 miles an hour. Speed limit signs and white 25 pavement legends are present at each of the ends of the streets to notify motorists entering either from Jans Road or Gainsborough Road of the legal speed limit. The street has a north-south alignment and provides access to several internal neighborhood streets. The street is fully improved with curb and gutter, sidewalks, streetlights, and street parking on both sides. This is a picture from the north end towards Jans Road. Here's a picture from the midpoint, and there are some horizontal curves in this section. And this is a picture of the south end towards Gainsborough Road. Now, I'd like to discuss some of the important speed hump eligibility criteria, which is established by the City Council. Speed humps can only be installed on roads that meet the California Vehicle Code definition of a residential street and have a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. Also, the road length must be a minimum of a quarter mile. If the road meets these requirements, the process begins when a neighborhood shows support of installing speed bumps by having a petition signed by at least 75% of the affected property owners or the fronting property owners. Once the petition is received by city staff, traffic study is conducted, which requires at least 2,000 vehicles per day, and at least 75% of those vehicles must be traveling at least 25 miles an hour. These are the key measurable criteria that we focus on. I want to provide you with some background info for the Hendricks Avenue petition. The petition was received in October 2023. with a 76% support rate from the affected property owners. In November 2023, the traffic data was collected, and the petitioners provided input on the placement of the 3 machine counters. Here's a map showing that placement of the 3 counters along Hendricks. In addition to the criteria established by City Council, we also checked the collision history on Hendricks Avenue. In the period of 42 months beginning January 1st, 2020, there has not been a reported collision on this section of Hendricks Avenue. This is a summary of the data collected from the 3 locations. The highest recorded daily traffic was 957. The prevailing speeds on similar residential streets throughout Thousand Oaks generally range between 33 and 35 miles an hour, and this is consistent within the 3 segments of Hendricks Avenue. Comparing this data with the speed hump criteria, we see that not all the criteria has been met. None of the 3 segments produced a traffic volume higher than 2,000 vehicles per day, and only 1 segment exceeded the speed requirement. In advance of this meeting, public outreach was performed. A total of 195 meeting notifications were sent to the fronting residents, including those who live on adjacent streets that could serve as a traffic diversion with the installation of speed humps. Prior to this meeting, 8 residents have provided feedback, with 4 in favor and 4 in opposition. Those emails and letters were provided to the traffic commissioners before the meeting. The staff recommendation is in the staff report and includes the following. Consider the report, receive public input, and deny the petition request for the installation of speed humps as the current roadway conditions fail to meet the city's speed hump policy numeric standards. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for staff? Okay, no. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Orozco.
First, as usual, thank you so much for the wonderful report. I felt like when I was reading the report, it was anticipating all of my initial questions right off the bat. But I did have and I apologize if you've already stated this or if this was in the report. How long did the count, or did you guys count the number of cars or vehicles that went through Hendricks?
Thank you, Commissioner Orozco. We left them out there for a week.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
Just wanted to confirm, we had the 3 speed counters that you mentioned. The one that was above 75%, was that the one closest to Jan's?
Thank you, Commissioner Callahan. That is correct. It was the most northerly location point, which was in between 1753 and 1775 Hendricks.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
First off, thank you for the report. Report and presentation. Just a few options, or just a few questions and points here. One, I wanted to see, you mentioned that we left the counts out for a week. Was that done at what point of the month, and when was that done in terms of season? I'm just curious if it was, a holiday week, or did we choose a regular week?
Thank you, Commissioner Pletcher. Yeah, so I always look at the Conejo Valley Unified School District calendar, schedule counts around that. It was a normal, typical week. There weren't any school holidays, there weren't any school closures or anything like that. It was in the first 2 weeks of November.
Thank you. And then if you could go back, I think, to your last slide, maybe couple more back, where you had, there it is. So it seems, just so I can understand staff's position in their recommendation, really to me it's twofold. It's one, it's traffic volume seems to be the greatest issue here in terms of speed, doing anything for speed humps. We did have one section of the road tick over in terms of the 75 percentile, but not all 3 sections, and that's part of the required ordinance and resolution. Is that correct?
That is correct. We want to do a street profile. We don't want to just look at one portion of the street. We want to get an idea of the entire length of the street.
Okay. If you could just run through, because, typically in these situations, if staff isn't recommending to proceed with speed humps, there's other options available for, perhaps that staff can work with the neighborhood on, or staff can just really take to possibly address some of the public comments that we're seeing regarding speed and concerns of speed. Could you just maybe walk through them? I mean, it was mentioned in your report, but I think it's important to, open it up for discussion here.
Thank you. Yeah, I think or police enforcement is going to be the most effective option here. I actually add another slide here to give an idea of the speeds to get a deeper dive into them, because the 85th percentile could be a little bit misleading. So I split them into groups on the 5 mile an hour increments to give a deeper dive into the speed profile. As you can see, most of the drivers are below 25 to 30 miles an hour. That's the big majority of all the drivers.
So you have police enforcement, and then you mentioned this radar speed display. Is that, remind me what that is? I think I know the answer.
That's the portable radar feedback trailer that the police will drop off around town. It'll post the posted speed limit. It'll also have your current speed as you're going. It's a nice reminder for drivers of this posted speed limit, how fast they're going. Gives them a little bit of reminder, but it's a lot more effective when it's present rather than when it's not.
And then, if you have an example, I'd love to go and look. I don't recall ever increasing the number of and size of speed limit signs. Are there different? I always just kind of look at speed limit signs as the same size, but are there different versions of speed limit signs?
Yeah, you generally put the sign size based on the speed limit, based on how fast traffic's going to be going. The higher the speed limit, the bigger the sign so you can see it. That would be an option here, adding more signs, increasing sign size, but it has limited effectiveness after a couple months. Once people are used to seeing that sign, it doesn't stick out as much. They're going to go back to the normal behavior.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and just to expand on the issue of basically controlling speeds, these are sort of the traditional strategies that basically all engineers, traffic engineers, sort of resort to when it comes to trying to control speed, because really there is no surefire way to slow traffic down. The only way is to introduce a physical measure into the roadway, such as the speed humps. That's why in 1983 the city adopted a speed hump program. It's a program that we work with the fire department to develop. It was approved by the city council, and it's a program that not every agency in California uses. Although it's recognized in our engineering manuals as a way to control speed, there are some risks involved. So when we developed our speed hump program, we had to develop certain criteria. What's the threshold of traffic volume in which we're going to put these speed humps in? Because if we put them in every neighborhood, every residential street, okay, there's some issues in terms of emergency response time. It's going to create some hardships for other people. There's a lot of discomfort for people when they drive up and over a speed hump, driving up and back. So if we were to add these, set the standard so low that all of a sudden, 50% of the residential streets in the city have speed humps, I think that's probably going to introduce some new issues and, complaints that perhaps the city didn't envision. So that's why we're looking at 2,000 vehicles per day as our threshold of volume, because a residential street generally is designed to accommodate 2,500 vehicles per day. So in the original policy that was adopted in '83, that was the standard back then. However, over time, we relaxed that volume threshold. It's now down to 2,000 because we probably covered most of the streets that were at that higher level. So now we reduced it down to 2,000. And perhaps maybe we reach that point where we've covered all the streets that are at 2,000 vehicles per day. But that's sort of the background. The idea behind setting that threshold a little bit higher is that you don't want to have every residential street with speed humps. But at the same time, the higher the volume, that generally indicates those are the streets having shortcut issues during peak hour traffic periods. Those are the streets at which, you want to try to get the traffic off those streets back onto the arterial streets where they belong. And on this street, the traffic volume is under 1,000 vehicles per day. In our eyes, it doesn't indicate that it's a, heavy shortcut street through the city. There's some level of shortcut on the street, but it's not that where we call it problematic.
So if you dug into the data, you probably would see some shortcutting, peak hour shortcutting, just not significant enough to hit the threshold that I think it was 2022 that we discussed the revisions to the speed hump policy.
Yes.
So it's pretty fresh.
Yeah, and then really the only way to determine if there's shortcutting is you'd physically have to have people out at the corner of Gainsborough and then the corner of Jans and measure license plates. So license plate that enter and exit the street at either end, we would have to, compare with, recorders at either side to determine, okay, what is actually the shortcut that occurs on that street. And usually we're going to do it during the peak hours because that's the time at which there's more likelihood of shortcutting, because that's when the arterial streets get a little bit heavier.
Okay. Thank you very much. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Good. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ackert, thank you for the report. I'm curious about the counters that are put out to record the number of vehicles passing through, and you said the counters were out for a week. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So when we're looking at this chart and it's showing us daily traffic, vehicle per day, when I read the report, I didn't know that the counters were out for a week. So when I look at these numbers, I say, oh, the counters were out there for a given day, and here's the number of vehicles that pass through on that particular day. So if that's obviously wrong, right?
Yeah, so we took the week and we took an average over those days because it fluctuates between Wednesday to Friday and Monday, and the weekend's generally shorter.
Sure, okay.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't included with weekends. It was just weekdays.
Okay.
So it's Monday through Friday, typical school traffic, and then a typical given week.
Okay, so really it's out there for 5 business days.
Correct.
Okay. So these numbers that we're looking at here are averages.
Yeah.
These are average numbers. So did you compile any data regarding the high and the low?
Yeah, I have it right here.
And the only reason I'm asking is because I just want to make sure that
Yeah, we want a number.
I mean, I realize it's unlikely, but the minimum threshold number was not ever reached on any given day.
That is correct. But if we're talking about the north end where we had the highest speeds, the highest speed that was recorded over that whole time, we had one car going between 50 and 55 miles an hour,
Okay.
over 5,600 cars. And in the 45 to 50 mile an hour range, we had 8 cars over that whole stretch.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really just kind of focused on now that I realize that the numbers that we were looking at in the report are just averages and they're not specific to one particular day. I'm just kind of curious now about what the highs and the lows were. So you've kind of already highlighted as far as rate of speed. You have some pretty large outliers there. I mean, if somebody's driving 50 to 55 miles an hour, but then the number, the vehicle count, do you have high and low vehicle count numbers?
So the middle stretch was the highest, was what gave us the highest average daily. So
I mean, in general, any residential or any street that that we have the daily volume fluctuation is going to be plus or minus 10% on any given day. That applies to residential streets and arterial streets.
Okay.
So if you're the midpoint at which you have the highest volume of 957, you know, that's an average over 5 days, Monday through Friday. And so if you're looking at highs and lows, yeah, that's probably going to fluctuate up to 10% higher, 10% lower.
So you're looking at a raw number swing of 100, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, if there was an outlier on that day, you know, it would catch our eye. But, you know, after we average the 5 days together and we see, okay, one day was, you know, it was 957 is the average, but one day had 500, we would look at that and scrutinize and find out, okay, maybe there was something going on. Maybe school is out that day, or perhaps there was a closure, or there was an accident or something that caused it. So if it was abnormally too low, we would dismiss that from the data presented to you.
Okay, thank you for that. So the counters, they count cars on a 24-hour cycle. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And then how do you extract the data from the counters? Like, is it like a USB cord or?
Yeah, it's a plug that plugs into a USB.
Okay. And then the data is downloaded and I'm assuming that is it showing you day 1, day 2, day 3, or is it just spitting out the total average numbers for the period of time that it was out there?
So it splits your typical day into 24 single-hour sections on the y-axis, and then on the x-axis, it splits it into increments similar to what I did here, 0 to 15, 15 to 20, and then it gives me the totals for each hour in those increments. And then I'm able to get the total from there.
Okay. Do you know how many speed limit signs are on Hendricks here?
Currently, there are one on each end. So if you enter from Hendricks, you get one right there with a pavement legend that says 25 in the street, and same thing from Gainsborough.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you have speed limit signs on either end of the street, in addition to the painted 25 mile per hour speed limit on the street itself, on either end of the street.
That is correct.
But at no point in the interior of the street is there any indication as to what the speed limit is.
That is correct.
Okay. And Mr. Mashiko, you had mentioned a few minutes ago you were talking about the speed cushions. And just for clarification, when we were here, back in 2022, and we were reworking this resolution for the speed hump warrants, my understanding is that what we walked away with was warrants that applied to speed humps, but equally applied to speed cushions. The speed cushions were just something, it's an alternative device that could be used at the discretion of the city manager, but the speed cushions were still subject to the warrants for the speed humps. Is that your understanding?
Yes. Well, basically, for those who are here and don't know what a speed cushion is essentially a speed hump, but with slots that are opened. We have them at a handful of residential streets in the city. But the idea is that where those slot openings occur, it tracks the wheelbase of a fire truck. So when they drive through, they don't have to go up and over the speed hump. They can just drive right through. So with those slotted speed cushions, the speed reduction is not as strong as with speed humps. With speed humps, you're generally going to see speeds between 20 to 25 miles an hour. And with speed cushions, the speeds are generally going to be between 25 and 30 miles an hour. And the city will have the discretion to determine if a street meets all the criteria and qualifies for speed humps. We'll determine, what is the appropriate device to use.
Okay, so in other words, when we're looking at alternative remedies for the problems that are being experienced on Hendricks, one of the alternatives for us to discuss is not speed cushions, because speed cushions are subject to the same warrants or eligibility criteria as speed humps, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Basically, you're just making a determination whether or not the street, qualifies for, meets all the petition requirements. And then in terms of the engineering decision making that occurs afterwards, that would be left up to us to decide if it meets all the criteria, and you make a recommendation. If it does meet the criteria, we would determine if it would be speed humps or speed cushions. And that's a discussion we would include with our fire department personnel as well.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Okay, anyone else? I just have, you mentioned enforcement. Have we done enforcement on that road?
At least during the period at which we did our, the traffic counts and things like that, we did not have the police do enforcement because we did not want to have that influence the results of the data. However, that's something that, the speed enforcement that can occur afterwards. We can, make that request to the police department as well as the residents. If they feel on any street in the city, they feel the speeds are too high, they can call the police department, make a request for speed enforcement, whether it's Hendricks, Jans, Gainsborough, any street in the city, and the police will follow up.
So then, based on this, if we received a petition, and well, as far as we know, there wasn't any enforcement before that, are we under the assumption that there were no complaints to the police department about speeding that they would follow up on? I'm just saying, so we collect accident data, and the data was provided there, but we log data for summons issued by location, right? So if there's no data there, then that's fine, I can understand, but that's just something that I think, at least for me, would be helpful to see, is if there was enforcement, and if there was in fact summons is issued along that street. It doesn't. I'm not saying at the same period of time where the counters were there, but just any prior time before that, when a complaint comes in or such.
Okay, yeah, I'm not really sure if I follow the question, but if it's whether or not we have records as to when enforcement occurred, that's something that, we don't have access to. We have to have the police department check their records. Because generally whenever a call comes in, we recommend when a citizen has concerns over speed, we do recommend that they do contact the police department for enforcement, since that's generally the type of action that the police department can do. Public Works, we don't, we don't engage in that activity.
Yeah, I understand. But we get the collision data from the police department. I'm just saying, can we get any data on enforcement as well? Like in a future report, it's just helpful to see if there is in fact an issue and it's been followed up through some enforcement actions. That's all I'm just asking.
Okay, yes, we could look to include that in the future reports.
And could you just pull the map up again of where the counters were? So the way that the counters work, they're measuring traffic both ways, correct? So we can't ascertain whether if a street is a cut through, for example, we don't know if or at least in this particular situation, the traffic going one way or another. What is the cut through, right? Because it's measuring traffic on both sides of the street at the same time, right?
Yeah, but you might misconstrue that for people just leaving the neighborhood. If that's the heavy movement exiting north, you might misconstrue that number. Like Jim was saying, the best way to figure out cut-through traffic would to have somebody at each side checking license plates to see who actually goes through that area.
Right. So that leads me to my next question is, so when you're measuring the 3, is there any way to disaggregate the data of like, I don't know how the counters work, whether it does it through time or anything. Like, if a car hits the first one and it hits the second one and it hits the third one, then, you know, chances are they're going through the whole street. If a car hits the first one and then doesn't hit the second or the third, then it's likely a car that lives in the residential area. That make sense?
Yeah, but it just has whether it's northbound, southbound.
Okay.
It doesn't classify each vehicle that goes over.
But because we're looking at it on an average, if we looked at it over like a block of time, like let's say over a period of an hour, give or take, understanding some cars will pull out of residences, but if we look at a 1 hour or 2 hour block of time, and we look at the first, the second, and the third, and you see, let's say 20 cars go through the first 2, and only 5 exited the third, then chances are the first 15 cars parked or stayed in the residential area. I know it's a lot of assumptions and there's variables in there, but I'm just trying to figure out if there is an issue there, is it local or is it truly a cut through? That I'm just having a hard time based on the data to figure that part of it out.
Okay. I think what you're describing, if you know, the 3 machines that are out there, if so starting from the south, if a vehicle passes machine number 1, and in theory they go to machine number 2 and then make their way to machine number 3 towards the northern counter, you're thinking maybe we can determine if that's a cut-through trip through that neighborhood, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is, these machines, they operate independently. They're not interconnected. They each operate off a clock. There may be a little, difference in the clock settings, but if the only way to determine, I guess, and also they wouldn't know, like, if it was the same vehicle. I understand what you're saying in terms of if during the first minute, like say at 6 o'clock in the morning, if a vehicle enters at the first counter, okay, and makes its way all the way through all 3 locations, you might assume that was a shortcut trip through the neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yeah, I understand it's not exact,
Mhm.
just trying to get some kind of idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we could probably do something like that with the machines. That probably would take quite a bit of time to, look through all the machines, break it down to the nearest minute, when we're looking at it based on per hour.
Nader Hidari, city engineer. Jim also alluded earlier to the volumes, and the other streets we've seen in town that have had cut-through traffic have had much higher volumes, up close to 3,000 vehicles per day. The volumes that we're seeing on this street at the 1,000 mark are typical for a residential street and don't indicate that there's some sort of big spike or big cut-through activity going on in that area.
Okay, so just the volume of the numbers doesn't support that it's a cut through, right?
That
based
lies-
on other
yes.
streets and with
Right.
similar. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so we'd like to offer the public an opportunity to speak on this item before the commission begins its discussions, and we have speakers on this item. Scott Levin, my apologies earlier. Now it's your turn. Thank you.
Well, you guys already answered some of my questions, so I'm repetitive.
No problem.
Just a reminder before you start, you will have 3 minutes. You'll be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time to speak is up. And just also state your name and city of residence for the record.
At 1775 Hendricks for over 20 years, where we have raised our 3 children. During this time, we've had to deal with and adjust our habits to always be aware of speeders as we cross the street and back out of our driveway. This problem has gotten worse, not better over time, and continues all the time and all day. I witness people driving unsafe speeds in excess of 50 miles an hour past my house on a daily basis. I'm sure the city's speed monitors placed in November would substantiate my claims. As I read through the city's traffic report, I noticed the monitors placed in November 2023 had no date provided. Depending on the time these monitors were installed, these numbers could be skewed as school was out. That has since been answered, but there was November 10th, which was Veterans Day. Regarding the 2,000 vehicle per day criteria on page 18, paragraph 5, I believe that Hendricks Avenue should qualify for a lesser vehicle per day of 1,500 as Lorena High School borders Hendricks Avenue and Jans Road. During the year, their sports program routinely has students jogging up and down our street and neighborhood for conditioning. Also on Hendricks Avenue, where the Sisters of Notre Dame convent is located, a preschool shares the same grounds. This preschool, on almost a daily basis, takes a group of children on a walk down Hendricks Avenue. Over the years, I have witnessed many close calls due to vehicles speeding down my street. One time, about 5 years ago, a gentleman hit my daughter's parked car, breaking her mirror off. When I asked him what happened, he said he swerved over because a car was speeding down the middle of the street and scared him. The city's traffic report, page 11, paragraph 2 states, "It should be noted that the city staff has found that the prevailing speeds on similar residential streets throughout Thousand Oaks generally range between 33 to 35 miles an hour. This is consistent with the segment north of Feather Avenue. It carries the highest
You have
volume
1
of
minute.
traffic and prevailing speed of 35 miles per hour. The city's report, page 10, also states, besides the prevailing speed of 35 miles per hour, 84% of the people are traveling over 25, with you guys stating over 51% over 30 miles per hour and 8 over 50 miles per hour. The 35 mile an hour speed limit is equivalent to 40% over the posted speed limit. I would like to ask everyone in this room to think about that for a second. If you are driving on the highway at a safe 65 miles an hour and someone blew by you at 91, is that safe? No, but it's also only 40% over the posted speed limit. Now take this into account, the increased amount of distracted driving from cell phone use and the increased perception and reaction times due to the speeding, and you have a recipe for disaster. Please protect the motorists, residents, pedestrians, and preschoolers by doing the right thing for the community and installing speed bumps on Hendricks. Thank you.
Time is up. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Hugo Roach.
Thank you, Commission. Appreciate the chance to say hello. I did write a letter, and I'm not going to try and read, and that's in your packet, and I'm not going to try and restate everything that's there, but there were a couple of things that I didn't think I had time or space to reiterate. I've been in my house for 50 years. I have my kids and my grandkids and have had access to Aspen, Redwood, Lorena preschool, and all the schools. We've never had an issue. I used to manage several shopping centers. My second home was here at City Hall because of that. But during that time, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry, but the one thing that I would like to have you seriously consider is that when you do a thing like speed bumps to improve a situation, you also need to look at the other side of it and the unintended consequences of all the innocent people that are impacted by things like speed bumps when they're not the culprits or even the petitioners. But I think if you could look at it in that fashion, you'd find that the city's recommendation as far as enforcement is a lot stronger than speed bumps. And it also might send the message to my neighbors, because I'm pretty sure an awful lot of the speeders are my neighbors. And I think a citation there would get, or several, would get the attention of the worst culprits. And lastly, I want to tell you all that I think the traffic is going to go down on that street, because with COVID, I had 9 people at my house.
You
I
have
had-
1 minute.
Thank you. I had 6 or 7 drivers, and 2/3 of those people have all now relocated. And so I think the whole traffic on the street is going to go down in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, James Misarowski.
All right. My name is James Misarowski. I live in Thousand Oaks, California. Thank you all for having us here tonight. I've lived at on 1753 Hendricks with my wife and child for almost 3 years. I moved here from the other side of Moore Park Road. The moment I moved here, I knew we had a speeding issue on that street. I've asked for additional police enforcement along this street. I know that was discussed tonight as well. I'm not sure if that ever happened or not, but if it has, it hasn't made any difference at all. One day I was backing out of my driveway, and I nearly got T-boned by a car speeding down the hill. It was going so fast I couldn't even see it coming until it nearly slammed into my car. It was at this point I realized something needed to be done. My biggest concern with the fact that there are no speed bumps on our street is that Hendricks is about 1,000 feet from Aspen Elementary School, and Notre Dame Preschool is along Hendricks with an entrance on Hendricks as well. Not to mention Lorena High School and Middle School are also on the street and have access to the Hendricks as well. I've witnessed teachers taking kids on walks outside of the school premises on Hendricks Ave on numerous occasions. Parents also walk their kids to school. This is a neighborhood, not a freeway. I understand the average speed during that one short week when the traffic survey was completed may have been under the threshold of traffic speeds needed, but this is just a very short time frame for this survey. I believe the reason the speeds were slower further south on Hendricks is because of the curvature of the street, as well as many parked cars on that street. Towards the north side of Hendricks, further towards Jan's, speeds increased due to the straightaway and the hill. I was speaking to one of our Thousand Oaks police sergeants about this speeding issue, and his first comment to me was, Hendricks. Yeah, that street has been an issue for years. People use it as a cut-through when Moore Park is jammed. So it's a well-known issue even to our own police department. I urge our council to consider the families and the children that live in our neighborhood and on this street. I'm sure I share this same sentiment with most of our neighbors with children, but I don't want to be afraid to teach my kid how to ride a bike on the sidewalk without fear of a car losing control at high speed and causing a catastrophic accident. The speeding
You
on the
have 1
street
minute.
is simply unacceptable, thank you. And with a 75% support rate for speed bumps, I'm clearly not the only concerned resident. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Leslie Lenko.
Hi, my name is Leslie Lenko, Thousand Oaks, California. I've been living on Hendricks Avenue for 5 years. The speeding has been getting progressively worse. There's a critical need for speed bumps. The highs are 45 miles an hour plus. The lows are 35 miles an hour. I never see someone going 25 miles an hour unless they're confused trying to find a place. It is excessive. The speeding is just not during critical times. It is all the time. I'm home most of the time. On a weekend, I look out my living room door. I see cars going by so fast, I can't even make out what they are. They're going like 50 miles an hour, just a swoosh. And I see constant swooshing during the day, 45 miles an hour plus. Plus, I see people now doing a U-turn in the middle of the street. The critical area is the area near Jan's and across from the Sisters of Notre Dame. Yes, the children are walked there pretty much every day on that sidewalk. There's like 12 of them, and people just whooshing by. Now, nothing serious has happened yet, but something serious eventually will. The upper area, the curve, people have to go slow because it's impacted with cars, trailers, all these different vehicles. The lower part is just kind of easy breezy because a lot of people don't take that area to get to Gainsborough anyway. The critical area is near Lorena, on Jan's, and Hendricks, and all that. It is like a highway, a freeway. It's just unbelievable. I mean, And nobody is complaining because we're basically all nice neighbors. And we all signed the petition. So it's kind of like no sense in complaining because we're going to wait and we're going to let our views come out. But
You have
we
1
need
minute.
this. We need this for safety, and children need it for safety. And at least in that area, there need to be speed bumps. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Jeremy Schatzer?
Good evening, Commission. Jeremy Schatzer, resident of Thousand Oaks. It's the first time I've been to a City Traffic and Transportation Commission meeting, so I'm not really sure how these work. I did read the Commission's notice and the traffic engineering report and the recommendation. If that recommendation is not already set in stone and a foregone conclusion, then I would implore this Commission to please seriously consider the public comments that I and my fellow neighbors are making here today. And I'd humbly request that the commission members individually reflect on whether your final decision and the commission recommendation would ultimately be any different if these sincere pleas were being made to you by a brother on behalf of your brother's family, or a sister on behalf of your sister's family, or by your next door neighbor, and if that would make any difference in your final decision here. My wife and I bought our home on Hendricks, directly across from that Sisters of Notre Dame preschool back in 2018, and where we live with our 3 boys, 3, 10, and 12. I work as an attorney. I've worked as an attorney at a law firm in Agora for over 14 years. And ever since COVID and the lockdown, I've worked exclusively from home. In our front bedroom, we made it into a home office. And judge me if you may, but 6 days out of a week, 8 to 10 plus hours a day, I sit at my desk and I look out at Hendricks Avenue. And just today, I saw the preschoolers doing their daily walk down the street. I can also tell you, and I say this because I believe I can offer a unique and credible perspective of somebody who literally sits and
You
watches
have
the
1
street
minute.
every day. The data of the 15% that's at the north end of Hendricks, that's where I live, and those cars that do at the high end are documented to be going 55 miles an hour is not an outlier. That 15% of the vehicles are going 45 to 50 plus miles an hour. And that is very serious when I have a 3-year-old child who's going to run out into the street, or the preschoolers across the street that are doing their daily walk. We do not need to wait until there's an accident or a death or something else tragic happens. So I implore you to please consider these comments, and I thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers?
We do have one registered speaker waiting, Scott Lockmus. Let me go ahead and get him online. Scott, can you hear us?
Yes, hi.
Okay, hi Scott. Scott, go ahead and please state your name and residence for the record. You have 3 minutes. You'll be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time to speak is up.
Thank you. My name is Scott Lockmus, resident of Thousand Oaks. I too live on Hendricks on the southern part. I live between Knowles and Thames. If you're looking at the map, I wish I could be there in person, but I'm daddy daycare tonight. I live on the southern part. I first appreciate all of the work and consideration all of you are doing to this and how seriously you're taking it. So thank you for representing our interests. We lived here for 3 years now. I have a 3, 5, and 6-year-old. We walk from our home, which again is between Knowles and Thames, so the last 2 streets before Gainsborough. And we walk up to Sisters of Notre Dame. We drop off our 3-year-old at preschool. Then we have to cross, which is the most hectic, nerve-wracking part of the morning. We need to then cross at Hendricks to get onto Dominic to walk up to Aspen elementary school. That is it's just a very uncomfortable thing, and we're teaching our kids safety and we're making sure, but people on both directions are just flooring it, either to get up the hill or they're ripping down the hill. And then that hill comes all the way down. And I remember the southernmost clicker was south of our home. And I think that might be a little bit misleading for what the average speed is, because coming down the hill south of Dominic through Feather is high, and it is a curve, which makes it even more dangerous. And I might add, there are no stop signs on any of the cross streets. So you can go from Thames or Feather and just go out into the street. There's absolutely no stop signs there. So typically if I'm going from Ralph's on Jan's, I come home through Dover, go through Thames.
You have
and then
1 minute.
Thank you. I'm going to make a left and then immediately pull into my driveway left. And on many occasions, there's a person coming off the hill very quickly and having to come right up on top of me, even though I'm putting on my blinker to get into my driveway. Just recently, someone started screaming at me that because I was in their way, I guess, as I was pulling into my own driveway. And, this is a rare occasion, but people are coming down that hill very, very fast. So I don't want that to be lost on this conversation either. And we experiencing this every day. And there are no crosswalks and as we said, there's only a stop sign or a 25-mile-an-hour sign at the beginning of Gainsborough and at the corner of Jan's and Hendricks. There's no other indication of what it is except for homeowners that have put their own homemade signs up, asking for everyone to be careful.
Your time is up, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, no more speakers?
No more speakers.
Thank you. Is there any staff response to speakers' comments?
Okay, yes, thank you. We took down some notes regarding some of the comments mentioned. First off was, were the counts performed on Veterans Day, November 10th? The answer to that is no. We don't count any traffic data on any holidays or known school days that are out. The dates that we used for this survey that's averaged is November 2nd, 3rd, those are Thursday, Friday, followed by the 6th, 7th, and 8th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So the holiday that was referenced was not used in the report. There was a question whether or not why the speed hump policy does allow the daily volume threshold to be relaxed to 1,500 vehicles per day. That's always a possibility based on whether or not certain conditions exist, including a presence of a school K through 12. But in the policy, it indicates, 2 or more conditions exist. In this situation, just the school exists. But for example, if we were to reduce it to 1,500 vehicles per day, the highest volume still does not meet that 1,500 threshold. We can drop say we even drop the daily threshold to 1,000 vehicles per day, half of the current threshold, it still would not meet that daily volume threshold. Someone indicated, there's unintended consequences of speed humps. That is true. There's a lot of times people don't take into consideration when you add speed humps. There's situations that occur. For example, first thing is traffic diverts to nearby streets. That's always been an issue in the past. We've experienced that on other speed hump installations. And in the presentation, Mr. Ackert indicated that we did notify the possible streets that would receive diverted traffic so that they're aware of this issue as well, so that they can provide input, because they would be could be affected if speed humps were to be added to Hendricks Avenue. Someone also mentioned, speeders are the neighbors, and that's a true statement. Generally in every neighborhood, the speeders up and down the streets are your neighbors, whether they live on your street or on the streets that connect to your streets, because Hendricks Avenue is a residential collector street. It's the main street that feeds and funnels traffic to other interior streets within that neighborhood. So that's why the traffic volume on this street is, it's going to be larger than some of these smaller side streets and cul-de-sacs. There was a question or statement made that maybe the speeds at the southern measurement point was misleading. I mean, I think anytime we do measurements of traffic data, I think people will always question whether or not, it's an accurate reflection of the street. There's a reason why we chose 3 measuring points on the street, but because we know that one location does not represent, the profile of that street. So that's why we spread the counters at 3 locations, present the data to the commission, to the public, so that they're aware that, there's going to be unique circumstances at any of the 3 measuring points. So we want to give the residents and the commission an idea of what the speeds are as you travel through that neighborhood. Some of the speeds are going to be influenced by the road curvature, and also the fact that at the northerly point, the road is straight, so obviously speeds are over there are probably going to be higher, and that's what we got. Most of the streets in Thousand Oaks are not on a grid system. Sometimes it's good to have road curvature because curves on a street helps to reduce speeds. Stop signs, why are there no stop signs on the street? Mainly because stop signs are not used as a speed control device. They're used to regulate right away at busy intersections. So if we were to put stop signs for not their intended purpose to slow traffic down, the unintended consequence of that would be a high violation where people would just blow through the stop signs knowing that it's really not there, or shouldn't be needed, because when they approach the stop sign, they're stopped on Hendricks, they're going to see that there's really no cross traffic at the cross street that it was placed, and so you're probably going to have a lot of people driving through and just blowing right through it, through that stop sign. And also, why are there no marked crosswalks? Crosswalks are not devices to slow traffic down. They're there to serve to guide pedestrians to cross at certain locations if it's not apparent where that crossing point should be. But I think most people realize that, if you're going to cross a street, you should be crossing at an intersection, and most intersections in the city are not marked. Especially on a residential street, we try not to put too many markings or signs in a residential neighborhood, because it's got to, those devices are going to be placed in front of someone's house, and generally the feedback we get is, well, if you're going to put that device in, why does it have to be placed in front of my house? So there's sort of a balance that we get stuck in between. If someone wants a device added to the street, well, if it's going to be added in front of someone's house, we're going to have to approach that resident that's going to be affected. And the feedback that we get often is that, well, why do we have to put it there? I don't want to look out my window and see that device. So those are the kind of issues that we would have to deal with on a residential street. So I think that's it for comments.
Thank you. I'll ask the commissioners, are there any other questions for staff? Commissioner Imelt?
Thank you, Chair. I'm fixated on these counters. Some of the speakers, were making statements that would indicate that maybe the counters aren't accurate. And it started me thinking, what kind of technology is in the counters to record speed? And how are these devices calibrated? How often are they calibrated? And how do we know that they're recording accurate speed?
Okay, well, basically these hoses that we have, or the machines, they operate with 2 hoses. They're set, I believe, 2 feet apart. And so when a vehicle passes the first hose, it starts a timer to say, okay, the machine's been triggered. And then once they hit the second hose, it turns off the counter. So based on the 2-foot distance and the time it takes to pass from the first hose to the second hose, we determine the velocity of that vehicle. That's what counts our speed. These machines, they're purchased from a vendor that we use. We've been buying this particular machine for at least the whole time that I've been working here in the city for 30 years. We update our machines usually probably every 3 to 5 years. We replace them periodically. We don't really go through a calibration procedure. We just basically replace them every 3 to 5 years.
Do you ever test them? I mean, do you ever lay them out on a stretch of open road and then get in your car and say, okay, I'm going to hit that counter at 35 miles per hour and let's see if it gives us an accurate feedback?
No, we don't go through a procedure like that. Sometimes what we do is we do have the handheld radar device. We'll go out there, and then as the vehicle is passing, we'll hold the radar device out there and then see what the measurement on the machine is, and then just compare it to what it is on the radar. And generally, it does match up.
Okay. One last question I had was, when you're looking at the eligibility for speed hump installation, these warrants, and we were looking at the criteria that we rely upon to reduce the vehicle per day count from 2,000 to 1,500. I mean, I know that two of the criteria from the list generally are used to reduce the number of vehicles per day. I don't think anybody is really disputing that one of the criteria exists, which is you have a K through 12 school adjacent to the street. And here we may have two. But then when you look at this additional criteria, one of the additional criteria is shortcutting from adjacent arterial streets exceeds 35% of total vehicle volume during 2 or more peak hour periods. It seems like, based on the discussion that we were having tonight, we're not able to determine what percentage of vehicular traffic actually accounts for shortcutting or pass through. And if that is true, if we can't look at the numbers that have been gathered and determine how many of these vehicles are cutting through or passing through, this criteria here will never be able to use it. I mean, it effectively is no good. Am I missing something, or is there?
I mean, that can be measured with a license plate survey that I mentioned earlier, where we have, I guess, staff positioned at Jans Road, and then staff at Gainsborough Road, and then we physically, write down every license plate and exits from each location for a 2-hour period. Do that twice, and then we can determine what the shortcut traffic is.
But we don't do that, right?
Only if we feel if it's necessary. But let's say, for example, we did this in this case, and that was satisfied. Say we dropped the criteria for the volume from 2,000 to 1,500. The volume on Hendricks still does not would not meet the 1,500 vehicle threshold.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, and I'm asking the question from the perspective that this commission's hands may be tied because we have a resolution that we must follow. It's the law, in our view. And so, if there's going to be an appeal from a denial of the petition, then an appeal presented to the city council is going to look a lot closer. It's going to be a closer call if they were evaluating vehicle counts per day at 2,000 versus 1,500 relative to the numbers that have been collected. I mean, if I'm a member of the public, I'm a resident of this city, I'm going to try and reduce that gap, right? Because it's like, I know, what's the old saying? close doesn't count except for horseshoes and hand grenades or something like that. But I mean, you know, if I'm going to go to the city council and try and make an argument, I want that number to be as close as I can get it. But in this case, nobody can use that one factor because we just don't make that count. We just don't. We don't have any.
Yeah, I can kind of circling back to some of the discussions we had earlier. The streets that we've seen with cut-through traffic have had significantly higher volumes and have been outliers, and we've immediately recognized this street has, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 vehicles per day. And then we've done these subsequent studies to determine the percentage of cut-through traffic. An example of that was Montgomery Drive, which has the speed humps and several other elements installed, and that one has those volumes at those levels because it is significant cut-through street. In that case, I think the percentages were 35 or 40% cut-through, but with the volumes this low, it doesn't. That didn't seem to warrant an additional inquiry in that regard. Nor had the residents, had they been complaining over the course of time that this is a cut-through street. There's all these cars cutting through, so that because of those factors, that wasn't evaluated. But as Mr. Mishiko mentioned, the traffic is still significantly short of the 1,500 vehicle per day number, which it must exceed before speed humps can be qualified for speed humps.
Sure, I appreciate those comments, and I understand. I just wanted to basically establish that there's no way, based on the investigation or the work that was done on this particular street, there's no way to meet that criteria based on the data that we've collected. Right.
Yeah, and also I just want to add on to a comment you made. If the data was close to, say, the 1,500 threshold, I think maybe that's something that we would investigate a little bit closer. We probably would, would look at the possibility of doing that license plate survey and to see, okay, if it, like, say, for example, our data show the daily traffic volume was 1,400 vehicles per day. I think, because we know there's a possibility that 1,500 threshold might be questioned, we probably would have done a license plate survey. But I mean, in our eyes, it's one of those, does it meet or does it not meet? In this situation, it does not meet the volume threshold. I mean, if it was close, I think we would scrutinize the numbers a little bit deeper and look at considering doing that license plate survey to see, if because we would anticipate during council, maybe they would have asked that question like you did, this shortcut percentage that might allow it to be dropped to 1,500 vehicles per day.
I understand, and I appreciate, and I don't mean to suggest that that there was a lack or a dearth of comprehensiveness involved in the study. I just have to ask because I want to make the record, and obviously I want to know for my own purposes. So, no further questions.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Pletcher? No, the public portion is closed. We understand everyone's why you're here and the reason why you're here. We have a lot of information here, and we just ask that you respect the commission's time, just like we respect the public's time, and let us have the conversation, deliberation, until we get to a point where there is a vote on the floor. Thank you. Commissioner Pletcher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask, one of the alternatives that we've considered and used and discussed over the time, both times I've been on the commission, striping. I wanted to bring up that issue, striping. We've looked at roads before and looked at striping and the possibility of kind of thinning the perspective of the lane for the driver. It's not, it's not ultimate, it's not determinative, it's not going to solve every problem on that road. But I just was curious if staff had explored that, because you had mentioned it's a 40-foot, I believe, wide road. It's parking on, both sides. To me, just, when I drove it, was giving the perspective of if there were lanes or clear lanes identified, maybe that, I'm just wanted to see if staff kind of explored it or had discussions on it.
Yeah, typically road striping, I mean, the general purpose of road striping is to keep vehicles, in the proper path, in their own lane. We have used it to try to influence travel speeds to be slower on arterial streets. Typically during our pavement projects where the road is resurfaced, we generally take all our 12-foot travel lanes, that's a typical travel lane width. We drop them down to at least 11 feet to try to influence slower speeds. But on a residential street where there's no striping to begin with, I think that becomes a bigger question of the neighborhood. If we want to add striping, we would probably have to, have the whole, the number of residents who front the road probably have input, because, once you start adding striping on a residential street, it might sort of create that look that, it might be more of a thoroughfare, and then maybe perhaps it might invite more vehicles to travel on that road. So there's a couple of issues you'd have to consider if you were to add striping on a residential street.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Roscoe?
Thank you, Chair. I know that staff provided a list of alternatives and gave some pros and cons to each of them. Understanding that in this particular scenario, Hendricks does not qualify or meet the criteria for speed humps, but in a different world, if it did, how effective would these speed humps or speed cushions be to mitigate speeding?
Yes, speed humps and speed cushions, they are definitely very effective in slowing traffic down. Every installation that we've had, as far as we know, the feedback we got from the residents who did receive the speed humps or speed cushions has been very positive. And then we always perform the after installation measurements, where we go out and to the same measurement points, remeasure the speed and travel volumes. And that's where we're finding that with the 3-inch high speed humps, that's our standard. The speeds are generally between 20 to 25 miles an hour. With the 3-inch high speed cushions, it's going to be between 25 to 30 miles an hour. And that's, the target speed that you want on a residential street. And then volume, depending on how that residential street serves the rest of the neighborhood, sometimes it drops because traffic diverts into the other, like a parallel street that's just as convenient as the street that you added the speed humps to. So that's something that we have to look out for.
Sure. Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Commissioner Callahan?
As someone who's new to the commission, somewhat new, right? Second year now. I heard a discussion about the criteria was updated relatively recently, 2022. Do we feel, or does staff feel at this time, that the criteria as currently written are up to date and you feel confident in them as they are currently presented?
Yes, we're very confident in our speed hump policy. In the state of California, I think Thousand Oaks was one of the first cities to adopt a speed hump program. So over the years, agencies have been contacting us to find out about our program, and we've been sharing our policy with the other agencies. So other agencies have piggybacked or developed their own speed hump policy based on ours. Obviously the traffic volume threshold is it might differ from community to community, but again, I think I indicated the rationale behind that higher threshold than other communities have used.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Just for process, so I'm clear, we're clear, what happens from here. So the petition triggers city staff to evaluate whether it qualifies, a road will qualify for speed humps. So two things could happen tonight. Either the petition is accepted, and then what happens? If the petition is denied, then what happens? I just want everyone clear as to what the process is on what happens on the outcome of this, if you can.
Yes, Chair Hayek. Yeah, there are those two paths, and so the recommendation before you is to deny the petition because it fails to meet the minimum thresholds, and in that case, then that's the end of the matter. The public may wish to appeal the decision to the City Council as with any other decision of any of the city's commissions. So that would be the path, and the other alternative is if it did meet the criteria, or if the item was accepted. It would then go to City Council for final approval. Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And it's a pretty long stretch of road, recognizing it doesn't qualify statistically for speed humps. And the conversation, I think, back in 2022, we talked a lot about what's the difference between a speed bump and a speed hump, right? I mean, we do that a lot. How do we determine the placement, or like how many on this road would we even consider doing? Let's say it does go through. I mean, I know you would have to probably look at it in more detail, but I'm just curious as to the whole stretch of the roadway, how many speed bumps are we talking about?
Yeah, I think we may have looked at that. Generally, the placement of speed humps is going to be about 300 to 400 feet apart. The idea behind that is that at that distance, that's sort of the speed at which, or the sweet spot that we found that drivers are going to maintain a uniform speed the entire distance. If you place it too closer than 300 feet, it becomes more of a nuisance. And if you go beyond 400 feet, then that's the time at which drivers start speeding up and then braking just before they hit the speed hump and slowing down, versus at about 300 feet, you're going to get most drivers driving at that uniform speed the entire distance. And I think for this distance, maybe about 7 to 8 speed humps along that stretch would probably fit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, one more question, Commissioner Callahan?
Forgot to mention this, but when I drove Hendricks, I came from kind of the Los Robles side of Jans, made a right, came down, went 25 miles per hour. There was someone right behind me immediately, so I understand. That person made a right on the first available street, which was Donick Ave, and then someone again was behind me and pulled into onto another side street. But I did when I pulled onto the street, I didn't see that initial 25 mile per hour sign, and I was cruising along, and I was like, oh, where's the signage? And I didn't see it, and I finally got to the end, at Gainsborough, and I saw the back of the 25 mile per hour sign, spun back around, went back up, and I could feel myself wanting to go faster when I got out of the residential area on both sides, right? Because I had cars on both sides. And then I started, approaching the preschool and Jans, and you can feel it just open up, at least at that time of day. And I know we've kind of explored, these alternatives, but I'm wondering, with the preschool there, is there some opportunity for school zone warning, type signage? Maybe it doesn't qualify for a crosswalk because the amount of students enrolled in the preschool. I'm not sure. Maybe that's something you could help us with, but I feel like that would really help a lot, just noting that there's a school present there. And I know that it's also been brought up, a resident wouldn't, typically want like a 25 mile per hour sign right in front of their house. And based on that kind of section at the top by Jan's, it felt like if you had another 25 mile per hour sign on the left side as you're heading down towards Gainsborough, where the open space is, you know, you can see it when you're driving down, and it's not in front of anyone's property. Even if you're, you know, it's on the other side of the street, you'd still see it. So it could be a double-sided sign for both directions. But I wanted to throw that out there to see if any of these things had come up in your thought process for that section.
Yeah, I think with the preschool, that's something that we didn't really, think about in terms of adding additional signs, because traditionally school zones are considered for grades K through 12, because those are the situations where you have the high concentration of traffic going to and from, in addition to students walking up and down the street. So I'm not sure how how that applies with a preschool, where most of basically the kids going to and from, they're being, driven to and from. So, but we can take a look at that and see how that applies. The signage for school zones applies to a preschool.
Just knowing the feedback we've heard tonight from residents about the use of the street by students in the schools, both Lorena and the preschool, it might be worth looking into the additional signage.
Is that it, Commissioner?
Sorry, thanks.
Commissioner Pletcher?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, question for the sergeant or perhaps staff. Police enforcement's top of the list on page 5 in terms of alternatives. What is the process for neighbors or residents or folks to coordinate getting police enforcement out there? I mean, obviously, short-term cons, we have the pros, we have the cons in front of us, but it seems to be right there the most effective deterrent to speeding. Can staff or sergeant just respond to that process and what that looks like and how quickly maybe that can get implemented?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So anybody, and I receive these routinely throughout the entire city, can call and request extra patrol, traffic enforcement, radar trailer, or any other type of specialized enforcement they wish. The traffic ones get forwarded to the traffic office. They get evaluated, handed out to the deputies that work those areas for enforcement. Just because there's enforcement doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be citations issued out of it. It's based on personal observations at the time of day and when they're there. But anybody can feel free to contact the police department either in person or on the phone at any time. And we will address the issue as best we can. We typically start with radar trailers because they are the easiest ones to put out there. And then we work our way towards enforcement from there. And again, enforcement's based on the availability of the officers at the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, at this time, we'll move on to discussion of this item and open up to the commissioners. Commissioner Roscoe?
Thank you, Chair. I first want to say thank you so much to everyone who came forward to speak, not just tonight, but to bring forth an email and even to sign a petition. I know what it's like to organize your community, and I also just want to acknowledge, city staff, and thank you so much for putting together the report, for reminding us of what the criteria is, the qualifying criteria for these speed humps. That being said, I also want to acknowledge that your guys' comments and your lived experiences are another data point that we want to consider when especially when it comes to public safety. It's not something to disregard. You guys felt so strongly and felt compelled to come forward and to advocate for your street and for your neighbors and for your children. And so, that being said, I think that it's really tough to to discount those lived experiences, but also acknowledge that like we are sort of feeling the constraints of what those requirements are. You know, I would hate for us to vote in a way that would put public safety in jeopardy, particularly when it comes to surrounding areas around a school. And so I wonder if there's something that us as commissioners can recommend or do, particularly with the northern part of the roadway, whether that's making a recommendation for speed humps in that particular space, or bringing more signage. You know, I'd be open to that discussion.
Anyone else? Commissioner Emil?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I share Commissioner Roscoe's sentiments about this particular street and the appreciation for the people who have come out and made their voices heard by us. It's always difficult in this type of situation because, as I mentioned earlier, as commissioners, we do somewhat have our hands tied. There is a city resolution which has criteria that generally we must follow. And we run into a situation like this where some of the criteria are there, some are not, and the resolution says that all of the criteria must be there or you don't get what you are asking for. And, you know, as a lawyer, I think about the situation in terms of lawyers will understand the term jury nullification, where you instruct the jury to follow the law, and sometimes the jury says, I'm not going to follow the law, and I'm going to completely disregard it, and we're going to go a completely different direction. And, you know, I'm not going to comment on that, but, you know, these situations really test, I think, a commissioner's thoughts on how to discuss this particular problem and how to really decide what to do with it. We have a list of proposed remedies. Commissioner Callahan, you know, has come up with what I think is a really good idea. I mean, you've got two schools adjacent to this street, and yet if there's no, you know, signage that there are schools here and you should slow down because children are present, I think that's an issue. And the residents seem to be saying that the preschoolers are walking up and down Hendricks, and I'd have a big problem with that. The question I think we have to ask ourselves is, you know, are any of the proposed alternative remedies adequate? And if so, what are they? And if not, then what do you do? Do you simply just deny the petition? Or do you approve the petition and then let the city council sort out what we did or how we thought about it?
Commissioner Pletcher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly share, obviously, a little frustration with, you know, the whole process, but at the same time, you know, let me back up, though. I mean, I've said it many times. I appreciate everyone here who came out and spoke today. The coordination and the the signature gathering and the petition process, it's long, it's arduous. You have to be passionate to want to get it done and kind of play by these ground rules that, you know, that are in this resolution to get the speed humps. So I think that first and foremost is key, and I want to thank you for that. You know, secondly, I echo both commissioners and what they've said about, so what do we do? Whatever we do tonight, I mean, I think to respond to Commissioner Orozco in terms of what does this process look like, I would like to make the suggestion that whatever path we end up choosing, and mind you, City Council either way could overrule us and pick a path and choose it to go down. I would suggest that we ask staff for follow-up 6-9 months, a year down the road to hear what's being done. Because I think no matter what path we choose, it's key and you know, to be responsive and receptive to the neighborhood is we need to do our jobs and follow up and make sure that whatever staff is doing and whatever City Council ultimately decides, that we can hear about it, and if further changes need to be made or another path needs to be taken, we can at least have a discussion and address it. So I would make the suggestion that no matter what, we kind of add to the whatever motion ends up being made, that we ask staff for a follow-up within, you know, 6 months to a year at some point, a future meeting, to let us know what's being done. I think that's key to number one. To address Commissioner Immel's comments about alternatives, I mean, from my past experience, it typically it has to be a combination of alternatives. It can't just be one particular road that solves the problem, because inevitably, you know, you can stripe something, for instance, and still have speeding. You can add speed enforcement, but if they're not there right as it happens, you're still going to have speeding. Radar speed display, it works, but it's only when the panel's present. We have these pros and cons laid out in front of us. So I think it has to be a combination of factors. And then ultimately, you know, we have a resolution that, I remember that meeting, we spoke about and wanted to seek the most, you know, I remember the criteria dropping it to 1,500 was a huge point of discussion, A. And then B was maximizing all the alternatives and then making sure that it wasn't 2, because if I remember right, we discussed different numbers, 3 and 4. And, you know, from what I've learned about this commission is we always like to have variances and make things as easy as possible for residents to hit. Ultimately, though, it requires 4 factors to meet. We don't have the power within our commission to overrule that. The City Council does. And I think ultimately it would be up to them if they want to decide to go in a different direction. So that's, you know, I'll put a, you know, that's kind of where my thought process is at, and I'd like to certainly hear from other commissioners who haven't spoken before we kind of put together what we want to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Callahan?
Yeah, I want to thank staff for this report. I want to thank residents for coming. We hear you. This is tough. I agree with all of the comments made by fellow commissioners. You know, we have this criteria, and you know, when we're here tonight not discussing the criteria, we're here discussing this, you know, whether this you know, request meets the criteria. It does not. However, I think I definitely agree that there is something going on this street, especially the northern part, that I'd like to see us do something. And I agree with Commissioner Pletcher's comment that I don't think tonight should be putting this to bed. I would like to revisit it as well. I'm a big believer in doing something and then seeing if it's working or not. And, you know, we do iterations. This might be a smaller iteration right now than residents are hoping for. But I think we should do something and then see how effective it is and come back to it with more data at a later date to see if it's having the impact that we were hoping for. And I guess the things that I mentioned in my previous comment that keep coming back, and I don't think I'm ready to make a motion. I think we need to discuss more, but I think there's a combination of factors. There's enforcement, but the signage, I think, would be helpful to have. And I know it's mentioned it's short term, but I think it would be helpful to have a reminder of 25 miles per hour again on the eastern side of the street, where there aren't houses on that northern section closer to Jan's, dual-sided, and then also looking into school signage just in general along that stretch, to say that it's a school zone. Those are the three things that I had in mind.
Okay. It seems like, things come to us to decide exceptions to the rules. The city council makes ordinances, they set criteria on these ordinances, and we're obligated to follow them, and then we come here and we're asked to make exceptions to those. So I get torn because I don't know where then it stops. If we keep making exceptions to the ordinances that are in place in the city, then it puts us in the position to continuously evaluate every single time an issue comes up where it doesn't meet the established criteria. And then without established criteria, then it becomes an unmanageable situation, which creates a whole host of other issues. So while I agree, I think everyone has some very viable options, and I think the need to do something has been justified here today. But in terms of looking at what the criteria is for speed bumps, is that the best solution? And is that the solution that we should make an exception to the rule for this one roadway tonight? I'm just not convinced that that's our role, and that's where we're here. That's why we're here today. Because I think there is something that we can do, and I think maybe that's the conversation is, all right, what is it that we want to do for our residents? This is our city, so, we do have a say. Commissioner Ermelt?
Thanks. So I've, Commissioner Pletcher and Vice Chair Callahan have kind of raised this concept about retaining jurisdiction of this issue, or like somehow this is going to come back to us like a boomerang. How's that going to work? I don't know if this is a question for council, but we deny this petition. Let's say hypothetically we deny this petition. We make some other recommendation for some alternative remedy. This may or may not go to the city council on appeal, despite our recommendation, right? Let's say the city council affirms our denial, denies the appeal. And then what? Are the residents left to refile another petition and then come back to us? I mean, right. So that's my issue. I don't understand how this is gonna come back to us.
Yes. So there's a couple questions in there, and I'll try to take them one at a time, and let me know if I.
Yeah, I apologize. The fundamental question is just how does it come back
that's
to
fine.
us?
I mean, ultimately, the role of the commission this evening is to apply the facts of this case to the city's policy, right? And then that's the role here. And when you do that, you'll either make a recommendation to deny the application, or you'll make a recommendation based on something, I guess, other than the policy to the city council. And if you deny the application, it doesn't go to the city council unless appeal is filed. Right. I mean, that's the action tonight. But the commission doesn't really have the authority to direct staff to do other alternatives.
Well, then, council, what's the point? What's the point of this report with all these other, proposed alternatives?
So the point of the staff report with the alternatives is to provide additional information to the commission about other speeding, calming devices that staff could use to address the situation.
Okay, but we don't have the power to direct staff to do anything.
I mean, just in general, the commission doesn't have authority to direct staff to take certain actions or spend money or, evaluate staff.
All we can do is make a recommendation.
Right, this is an advisory commission, yeah.
Right. Okay, so to get back to my original question, how does this come back to us? Because some of the commissioners are saying, well, we'd like to follow up on this, or we'd like it to come back to us. The reality is, it most likely is not going to come back to us.
Generally speaking, the action tonight is not going to come back to traffic commission, right? Almost universally, staff provides updates on advice that the traffic commission has provided on other items, right? So there's generally speaking, a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, staff will provide an update on things that have come before the traffic commission. Like, for instance, if there's a recommendation regarding the installation of some traffic device, staff will provide an update that, 6 months later, this has happened, it's in, whatever, or it's delayed, or what have you.
But if there, from a resident's perspective, if there was incentive, or if there was some motivation to reinitiate this petition, I mean, they couldn't do so for 4 years, right? So if we were going to recommend some alternative remedy be deployed, the most we would likely get is maybe some status update after the recommended device or alternative remedy was deployed, but that's it.
Could you repeat the question? I don't know if I'm clear on the question.
Well, what I'm just trying to straighten out here, for not only for my benefit but for the benefit of the people who took the time to show up tonight, is if the petition is denied and we recommend some other alternative device be deployed to address the speed problem on Hendricks, the petition in this particular issue will likely not come back to us if the city staff decides that they are going to take our recommendation and consider deploying an alternative remedy or device. They will or will not do that. And the most that we'll ever probably find out about it is a report, several months from now after the staff decides what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So this action would not come back to the commission, but you would receive a report somewhere down the road on, what has or has not occurred at that location.
Okay. I think we're straight then. Thanks.
Just to follow up on that, can part of our recommendation be that we seek to have another speed check done on Hendricks to see the impact of our recommendation tonight?
I think the short answer to that is no. I don't believe that the commission has the authority to direct staff to use city resources to come up with a different study.
Even if we're recommending it to city council and they would have the decision as a advisory committee?
You're asking, can you recommend to the city council that they direct staff to conduct a study?
Correct.
Yeah, that's something you could do.
Okay.
Commissioner Pletcher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and make a motion. I'll make the motion to deny the petition request to the installation of the speed humps as the current roadway conditions fail to meet city speed hump policy numeric standards, particularly on Hendricks Avenue between Gainsborough and Jans Road. As part of that recommendation, or part of that motion, excuse me, I'd like to note in that recommendation that the Traffic and Transportation Commission recommends that alternatives heard here tonight, and I don't think we need to get an exhaustive list together because I think it's pretty well detailed in the record, that alternatives be explored, and I think that's pretty straightforward, Council, based on what you've just said, correct?
Yeah, so as I understand it, the motion is to deny the petition, but provide recommendation to staff or the city council that alternatives be explored to reduce speeds at that location.
Correct. If it does go up on appeal, the recommendation to city council, but as it currently stands, if it doesn't go on appeal, then staff to explore recommendations discussed here tonight.
Yep, understood. Okay, we have a motion. Discuss the motion. Commissioner Callahan?
I'm in support of that motion, but I would request that we add to the end of it our recommendation to city council to have a follow-up speed assessment on the street within an appropriate amount of time. I'm not sure what that, maybe staff can give guidance on typically how long you would, look for something to take effect before you revisit it.
Well, yeah, generally anywhere between 3 to 6 months is what we look at after something is implemented to see, what sort of what the permanent new norm for that road segment is. So, we'll just look at on a case-by-case basis. So the soonest, with 3 months is when we would do the study. The longest would be 6 months, so somewhere in that time frame.
So I guess I'll turn it back to my commissioners. How do we feel about adding that to our motion?
So just to sum it up. So deny the petition, recommend to city council to direct staff to seek alternative solutions to the issues mentioned on Hendricks, and follow up with a study and report back to the Traffic Commission. Is that it?
Commissioner Pletcher, is that going to be your new motion, or are you sticking with the original motion?
No. As substituted makes, not a substitute, but it would just be a modification.
It's a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment. Thank you, sir. No, that's fine.
Okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner Immelt?
Yeah, so the point that Commissioner Callahan raised earlier about the school signage, is that a part of this motion, or is that just, were we just talking?
No, I, as the maker of the motion, I wasn't going to go through an exhaustive list because I think staff, the experts in the room, need to look at alternatives and figure out the best way to deploy them. If it means doing speed enforcement, just as an example, if it means doing speed enforcement first, seeing what the response is, and then exploring signage. The way I phrase the motion and the way I'd like to see the motion is, let's let staff do their jobs. Let's let city council provide proper direction. It's trusting staff also to make sure that in that report to city council, if it goes to city council, that it lays out those alternatives that we discussed. So I wasn't going to get specific because I don't think we're the experts in the room when it comes to that, and they know the best way to, we don't want to carpet bomb the neighborhood with different alternatives of.
Yeah, I understand. It's just that the school signage is, I don't know that its primary function is a speed calming device. That may be the byproduct of it. So I didn't know if it needed to, if it would necessarily be understood that discussion was to be incorporated into the motion. Because, I mean, a school zone may, and school zone signage, and that may create a host of other, circumstances or ramifications beyond speed. So I didn't know if that was being treated separately or if it should be called out in the motion. I just, not like I have an opinion on it, just wondering.
Yeah, again, I wasn't going to call it out. I was going to let staff, I think looking at shaking heads yes from staff, they understand what we're trying to say here, and I was going to let them handle it the best way they know how in terms of what actually calms speed or deals with speed versus, because we've discussed every alternative. And, for instance, like I brought up striping, and striping doesn't even seem to be seems to be a non-starter because it invites a whole host of other problems. They'll consider it, they'll check the box, yes or no, and kind of move on if they end up making that recommendation to council. That's the way I kind of see it. That's why I wanted to stay vague and not get specific, because we could be here for another hour just getting all the specifics of everything we talked about for the last two.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting we come up with some comprehensive, exhaustive list. I just, with that specific item, I didn't know if it should be treated separately or not. But
I wasn't intending, but if you had a friendly amendment, as
well, no. I think Mr. Mashika was taking notes on that particular issue, so I didn't know if we should just leave it to city staff to look at that, and we're dealing with this other issue.
My intention was to leave it to them, and just to make it clear for commission as you vote on it, is to leave it to them in terms of alternatives. I just want them. The goal in making it was just to please explore the alternatives, and have that be a part of our recommendation. Should it go to council or just it doesn't go to council.
Okay.
If I can just add a comment, if you look on the staff report on the top of page 5, first paragraph, it does indicate that we would still, consider sort of what is being asked in terms of looking at other alternatives. That we will still look at each of the, different strategies to try to calm traffic on that street. So.
Point of clarification. This is a good discussion. So what comes next is what? This goes to city council, and no. What comes next?
If the motion is passed, if my motion as phrased is passed, it would not go to city council unless the petitioner or residents choose to appeal it.
Understood. My only concern maybe with not including that verbiage is not all city council members will rewatch what we've just said. And if we aren't specific enough in this, they're seeing what, just simply what is presented to them, just the motion. And I guess what I'm wondering is, should we say alternatives such as, list a couple, it's not exhaustive, but that way at least encompasses some of the main things we've discussed.
I mean, how hard is it to say including but not limited to the very items that are in the staff report? Right?
I agree, and again, I think staff is shaking their head yes, and they have it in page 5, and from all my experience looking at items that go to city council from traffic commission, they, Bradley would include it in a paragraph, in terms of like when he writes the staff report, or Jim or whoever's doing the item, would put that in the staff report about what was discussed and the alternatives and the recommendations. Again, they're the experts in the room. I would trust, the way I particularly want the motion is that they know what they're going to discuss. They know what relevant alternatives are. It's on page 5. Not to say I don't like the signage near the schools. I like that. But I think we've discussed it, and I think they've taken it down on their notes, and I think they'll consider it.
Could you rephrase the motion?
Council, can you rephrase the motion, please?
I can try. And correct me if I'm off here, but what I think the motion currently is the motion is to deny the request for speed humps at this location. Provide a recommendation to the city council to have city council direct staff to evaluate this street for other options to reduce speed in the area as listed in the staff report. Is there anything else in there? Well, I'm sorry, I missed the.
And to come back and just report back to the commission what, if any, measures were taken?
Well, what I will say is that regardless of that inclusion, staff is going to come back and provide you input on what has or has not occurred. Because the the recommendation is you're providing a recommendation to the city council to do something. So are you asking the city council to direct staff to report back?
So I guess this is a question for us. Do we want simply an update of what measures went into place on Hendricks? Or do we want that plus more data on the numbers? Have they come down? Like, do we want to see to that extent, or are we happy with what measures were put in place?
So I think what you're suggesting is that the motion will be approved, or the motion will pass to deny the petition with the recommendation to city council that they consider these alternatives, and also recommend to city council that after any one of these alternatives or whatever may happen with whatever the city council decides, that there are future readings taken on the street, and we get another set of readings like the ones that we just saw. Is that what you're...
Right, and I believe Mr. Mashiko mentioned 3 to 6 months was appropriate to revisit after implementing something. So that would be the piece that I would propose to the end of that.
Let me ask you, council, could we just simply phrase it as part of that recommendation for council to explore alternatives to speed control as stated in the staff report and discussed here tonight, and just ask for an informational item to come back to, a little bit more detailed, let's say, than the status report, just an informational agendized item 6 to 9 months from now, that just details what was done and rolled out, and if staff explored options where new data was collected or alternative data was collected, we could just have that in the report. I'm not saying that's the whole motion, but you're kind of getting what I'm suggesting, of just put an informational item on the agenda, give us a little bit more detailed staff report than what you normally would in item 9, just so we can check our boxes.
Yeah, I think I understand that motion. I guess what I don't understand is whether or not there's consensus on the commission as to whether or not the recommendation is going to include a recommendation to the city council to have city council direct staff to do additional testing or research at the location.
See, and thank you. On that note, that's not the path I would suggest we go down. Again, I would come back to let's let staff be the experts in the room and do whatever they think is necessary if city council ultimately directs them to in terms of exploring those alternatives. As part of that process, we know just through, they will get new data, they will understand whether these alternatives were working, and we will see that in a staff report. I don't think, and at least it's not my intention to include that in the staff report to have any particular direction given. I think, again, let city council and let staff, the experts in the room, figure out what those alternatives are. Does that make sense?
Yes. Point of clarification, though. If we implement some of these measures and residents still feel there is a speeding problem on the street, how is that then considered again by staff?
Well, and that's why I'm suggesting we get more specific and say it doesn't come back on item 9. It comes back as an informational item in a future agendized report. That would give, if any of the residents, if they feel like they want to come back, as you know, informational item, they can come and do public comment again, and that will provide the residents another opportunity in a public forum to come and speak to us as to, hey, I saw city staff, or I saw the sergeant out there on his bike, writing 5 speeding tickets that day by our friendly neighborhood lawyer in the back, sitting watching the neighborhood. Providing that, at least it's an informational item. We won't, as we know, we don't have much power beyond that, but we want to hear back from what is being done, and that gives the neighborhood another opportunity to come and speak before us.
So just following that, if we were to go that route, residents wouldn't be notified, though, unless they were checking for the meeting agenda. Correct?
Correct.
So one thing I'd like to raise up just on this point, though, is that I have no problem with the experts in the room doing their jobs. I mean, they can go, this can go before the city council. The city council can hear from staff. City council can decide whatever it is they're going to decide, but I would like to have a recommendation that city council direct the staff to take new readings, go be the experts, deploy what the experts think is the right thing to do, but then take new readings and come back to us and let us know if it worked or if it didn't work. Otherwise, it's like you're just casting a ship out to sea, and you'll never know if what you did worked or didn't work. So what's the point?
I guess as a clarification point, I don't know what the difference is from what I'm saying and you're saying.
Well, I think you're saying an informational item, but it's not clear from what you're suggesting that we actually get new readings to be able to determine whether what the experts did work.
I guess what new readings are you looking for that I'm not already suggesting? Because based on
the same readings that the same readings that we had in this report.
You're wanting them to do
lay down the
counters again
for a week? It's not like we're overworked. I mean, really. I mean, I think we can take a look at this again.
I mean, that's fine, but I think that, that's...
And it's only a recommendation. I don't know if the city council is going to grant it or not.
Well, I think A, yes, that's correct. It's only a recommendation. And then B, a logical step in the process is if they post an officer on both sides of that street and then roll out, option 2 and option 3, they are going to go back and do the traffic counts again because they will, that's the only way to see if the traffic has slowed down, gone down. So I think we're saying the same thing. You're just wanting a little bit more specific than what I'm wanting to give in that motion.
You're probably right. I mean, I would like to see new readings, and I would like to have it come back so we can assess whether or not what was ultimately done with this problem worked.
I mean, I think the only other, if you have a substitute motion or something a little bit more specific you'd like to propose, I think that's a way we could kind of...
The motion that council articulated and then you said, but I don't, and then council said, but I don't know if there's consensus on this one particular issue. The way you phrased the motion, I would have supported it. Because you were saying, recommend that city council direct city staff to report back to us with new readings or new information, just like they presented in this staff report. And it can be an informational item. I don't anticipate it being an action item, but I would like to keep tabs on the efficacy of what we did.
Okay, I can try to articulate that in a motion if that's the desire of the commission. Yeah, okay.
Just before, I'm sorry, before you do, I feel like we're dancing around something here. Like while this commission can't necessarily direct city staff, in this meeting, what we're asked is whether to approve or deny the petition, right? That's the foundation of this.
That's it. That's the request.
So now, if in this meeting we're having conversation and it's written in the report that staff will consider these other things that may be appropriate, is it not enough for this commission? Like if city staff says, we will look into these alternatives, that's what the report says, and we're telling you we're going to look into this, and then we'll report back to you on what we did and how it went, and we can ask, say, you know what, we just like a new set of data when you do that so we can see the difference. Do we need to include that? We want to direct city council to direct city staff to do these things? That's my thing. Like, I mean, aren't we, I think we're all here for the same vested interest that we have. So I'm just wondering, like, if city staff says in this meeting that this is what they're going to do we really need to add into the motion all this other verbiage about it? Or can we just accept what they're going to say? And then if they don't do it, then that's a whole nother story. I'm just wondering why we're going around.
I think the disconnect is like, why can't we just cut out the middleman and direct staff to do what our recommendation is? And I mean, the ultimate answer to that is that this body doesn't have the authority to direct staff to do work. So the authority that this board has is to provide recommendations to the city council, and then they can decide, you know, what they want to direct staff to do because they ultimately have that authority.
No, I understand, but the procedure here is a group of residents signed a petition asking for speed humps, and are asking city staff to address an issue that's going on. So it doesn't qualify for speed humps. It came to this commission. The commission says, just say the commission says no. It doesn't just get thrown away and ends, right? I mean, there's a procedure that I think that's maybe what's not coming out here is what there's this just doesn't end here tonight. If we don't make a motion that says direct council to, or recommend the council to direct city staff to do anything, this just doesn't go away, right? Everyone has responsibilities here in this room, and I'm presuming that when we leave here tonight, if it gets denied, that city staff will follow up on these things because that's their job and their responsibility. I'm not directing them to do that. And if that's what it can be said, if someone from city staff says, we will follow up, we're not directing them to do it. This came out in the conversation. It's written in here that city staff will follow up. I just don't see us as directing city staff to do anything other than what's written here in this report. So I'm just wondering why we have to make a recommendation to city staff to say the same things that we're saying. And if city staff acknowledges, and that's the process that would be normally followed, whether it was this case or another case, it just doesn't go away because it ended, because the petition just for the humps didn't go through or meet the criteria.
Yeah, I think I understand the point, and I think you're right. I mean, one way or the other, staff, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, has stated that they're going to evaluate this location for alternatives. Right, so that they've made that statement. That's not true. So that's what they're going to do regardless of the outcome, right? The action before the commission right now is to evaluate the citizens' request to install speed humps on this street, right? And that what we're here to do is to evaluate that request in light of the policy, make that decision.
So can someone verbally just say, if this petition it gets denied, city staff will follow up on those other things and we report to this commission at a later time? Isn't that what we're really asking for? Or I'm just wondering if we need more detail than that.
Look, I mean, the way I look at this is like, you know, and pardon the analogy, but you know, if you go into a court of law and the plaintiff is asking for certain relief, and the court says, no, I'm denying your relief, but because the defendant says, don't worry, trust me, I'm going to do this and that and the other thing, then you have no recourse. So that's why I feel like it's appropriate to articulate in the motion that you're denying the petition, but what about the rest of this stuff? I mean, I know the city staff says, trust us, we're going to do it, and I have no reason to doubt them or not to believe them. But what's the harm in articulating that we recommend to city council that they direct the staff to consider these other alternatives? And we also recommend that the city council ask the city staff to come back to us, take additional readings after they implement whatever devices they're going to implement, come back to us and let us see. I mean, it's up to you guys. If you guys want to see the results of your work of sitting here for 2.5 hours tonight, it's up to you. I mean, I'd like to, but if you guys don't care, I don't care.
I don't think it's a don't care thing. I don't think it's not a don't care. I mean, I don't know. I'm just.
How much of this is semantic?
Well, I think part of this is procedural. I think we all have an obligation to fulfill our responsibilities, and city staff has their responsibilities. I just like to hear from staff, like, what happens if this is denied, and whether it's included in the wording or not. That's fine. I just don't think that it's necessary, in my opinion, because I feel like this is something that should be followed. And if it's not, then all of the trust between this commission, at least myself, and the city staff and everyone else is broken if they say they're going to follow up on something and they don't do it. And then, you know, whatever those recourses are. So, I mean, I'd just like to hear at least a response from city staff. And then if this commission wants to put the other wording in the motion, then we can move forward and do that.
Yeah, I can, sorry, it's a little bit loud there. I can affirm that the items which are outlined at the end of the report, which are alternatives that we will follow up and investigate, and as well as some of the ideas that were generated tonight for potential other concepts or school zone or speed limit sign relocation and so forth. Those are all things that we will definitely evaluate. I think one challenge with putting recommendations to city council is that this item, per the speed hump policy, this item does not go to city council unless it's appealed. So procedurally, and I don't personally recall the traffic commission adding additional recommendations or asking the city council to direct staff to do things, but I haven't seen that before. So I think that's what Chair Hayek is kind of getting at. Instead of going through like a non-standard route, we're already going to be exploring these elements as we would with any other street that is we have residents inquiring about or asking for certain issues about that may not qualify for certain things. A residential neighborhood, not often cases, wants a stop sign, but a stop sign is not warranted there because of the volumes and so forth. But we do work with the police department, and we do work with the neighborhood to try to deploy whatever other resources may be available. And this is no different.
That's very helpful. Is staff planning to come back to us with an update on vehicle speed counts? I think that's the thing that we haven't really pinned down. We've talked about alternatives being considered, implemented. We'll get an update on that. But how about, will the data come back to us?
Typical practice is that unless there's a change in a situation or a new development created or a school opened or closed or something that would warrant traffic patterns to change, residential streets aren't recounted on this high frequency basis multiple times a year. We have counts that are done all over the city on a rotating basis to manage and oversee our streets, but to repeat counts in the same year in a location with no increase of demand or increase of generation of traffic is not something that we would typically carry out.
So my only concern with that is if I heard like a 4-year thing about being able to come back, does that mean that if the residents still feel that there's a speed issue on Hendricks, even after staff implements some of these measures, that they have to wait till that 4-year mark to come back with a concern?
Yeah, if it's related to another speed hump request, that would be the duration, and that's the time frame that this commission and the city council put into the policy, that so they don't have repeats every year of a neighborhood that doesn't qualify that keeps coming and putting agenda items on the traffic commission and city council because typically nothing substantially changes in the course of a year.
Okay,
that would
but
warrant the conditions to change or the numbers to change.
Understood. If they didn't ask for speed humps, if they asked for alternatives to be considered for speed, could they come back with that concern within a year?
Yes, but those are typically handled at the staff level. I don't think speeding concerns typically don't rise to the traffic commission unless there's some specific action associated with it. But there are, Mr. Mishika can probably address it, but speeding on residential streets, whether it's the smoothness of the asphalt we have or the people have cars with higher horsepower engines in this town, but speeding on residential streets is a common situation throughout Thousand Oaks, throughout Southern California, throughout California. So that's not an unusual comment.
Yeah, that is probably the most popular request that we get, speeding on any residential street. There's certain streets that tend to be more vocal than others. I mean, we do get basically requests of speeding on a daily basis. I'm providing probably speed hump information to a resident at least once a week, saying, okay, we do have a speed hump policy resolution 2022-25. Provide them copies and walk them through the whole process. But in terms of most of the or once they get the information, most of the petitions don't get circulated. This one happened to be circulated. The residents were passionate enough to feel that there's an issue here, and that's the reason why we're here tonight with our traffic commission. But if there's an issue, other than speed humps, those issues don't come to the traffic commission. If the other alternative that we get for residents saying, they want to control speed is stop signs. Well, stop signs are not a device to control speeds. They're there to regulate right away at busy intersections. That's something that, we would do a study for a resident if that was requested, but you're going to have heavy volume from all approaches from into that intersection to qualify, because that's based on a state standard, not a city standard. So we would advise the resident, if the numbers were met or not met. If it's not met, basically that the investigation ends right there. So I mean, again, speeding is the number one issue that we do face in terms of the concern that we receive most frequently. And I would imagine the police department, they hear that on a daily basis just as much as we do in terms of what can be done to control speeds.
Given there's obviously a lot of concern on this street, what is the time frame from here for staff to look into alternatives to implement something? When can residents expect to see something happen on the street, and then when can we expect an update?
Okay, that also I just want to clarify, if we do an investigation, let's say, for example, the findings show that maybe the sign that you were thinking should be placed does not qualify. So, we can look at every sign in the book and see, does it qualify for Hendricks? If it doesn't apply for that road, the conditions don't apply, it's not installed, we would not perform an, before and after study, or even if we did add a sign, typically that's not the situation that we do. I mean, we're installing signs on a daily basis throughout the city, sometimes adding additional speed limit signs, but after those signs are added, we don't go back out there and remeasure the data. We're looking at a significant change in the road conditions if we're going to do a remeasurement. Example would be new traffic control devices. Say we added a new all-way stop sign at, say, the midpoint of the street, or say there was a new development half a mile away, possibly that would add more traffic cutting through the neighborhood. That's grounds to do a remeasurement. But if we added, say we added a school zone sign, we added more speed limit signs, that's not a change to the road, that's just a visual change to the roadway. That's not a physical change. I think, we heard from the commission that you'd like us to do a measurements before and after. I think, the direction that you've provided, and we've been taking notes, I think that's something that we can do in this situation, given that, the residents went through the petition process. So this is, just a continuation of that previous investigation. So, we took notes and know the direction that you've provided. So I think we can provide a before and after data set that's, supplements the data we already provided.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mashiko. Just to follow up, what would a time frame look like? I know the solution will, depending on what you come up with, it'll have different time frame, but are we talking about 3 months from now, 6 months from now? If there is a solution identified, it would be implemented, and then are we looking at this coming back to us within a year, before the end of the year?
I think the period at which we would do measurements would be just before the school year ends, towards early June or end of May or so. At least 3 months would have passed if we added more signs or pavement markings to the road. And then, we want to collect the data before the school year ends, when, that's what we consider typical traffic for that roadway.
And then you'd be able to give us an update before the end of 2024, ideally?
Yes, we probably I think we meet in July, so maybe during the July meeting, we
Okay.
provide some information.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to deny the petition and send a recommendation to city council to direct city staff to explore the alternatives that were noted in the report, plus the alternatives that were discussed today, including the school crossing crosswalk conversation that we had, and then come back and report to the commission what steps were taken and what the effectiveness of those steps were by taking new measurements. Is that right? Does that sound?
Wasn't that specific, but essentially deny the petition. Should it go to city council? Note that in our recommendation to explore, request that they direct staff to explore alternatives and report back to the traffic commission at a later date. I think that's.
Okay, those are different motions. Do we have one of those on the floor?
That's what I'm gonna.
Okay.
That's what I'm gonna go with,
All right.
because I think we've discussed this to no end, and I think staff understands what alternatives need to be explored, and I'm just gonna stick to that. That it's deny the petition. Should it go to city council on appeal, please include that we'd like a recommendation for staff to explore alternatives, and please report back to traffic commission.
Okay, that is the motion on the floor.
Okay, any further discussion? Ms. Vasquez, want to take the roll?
Commissioner Amell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Roscoe,
Yes.
Chair Hayek,
Yes.
Commissioner Pletcher.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Next, we have our second engineer's report. Mr. Mashiko?
I think you have to read.
Oh,
Thank you. Yes, let me make this announcement, please. Sorry. Any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic Commission shall file a written appeal and pay an appeal fee with the City Clerk Department within 14 calendar days of the decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date. The appeal fee will be refunded only if the City Council overturns the Traffic Commission's decision. An appeal form is available from the recording secretary.
thank you. Next, we can move on to our second engineer's report. This is an action item presented by Senior Engineer Jim Mashiko.
Okay, yes, thank you, Chair Hayek. As an action item, as you mentioned, to receive feedback on the proposed updates to the City of Thousand Oaks Road Standards Plate 3-10, titled Standard Intersection and Corner Site Distance Requirements at Intersections and Driveways. As you may be aware, Plate 310 serves as a primary tool to develop a recommendation for stop signs at uncontrolled intersections, typically for the terminating leg of the T intersection in residential neighborhoods. We receive several public requests for stop sign control annually, where the concern that is generally conveyed to staff is that the drivers who are obligated to yield the right-of-way at these uncontrolled locations do not, and stop sign control could remedy the situation. This is followed up with a field investigation to determine if the request has merit. Plate 310 has served as the basis for every stop sign recommendation over the past years that has been received or reviewed by both the Commission and City Council. Last September, the City Council directed staff to review Plate 310 for further evaluation, present the findings and recommendations to the Traffic Commission for input, and return to Council with any recommendations. The image here shows Plate 310, which is included in staff report as attachment number 2. The plate focuses on the stopping site distances necessary for vehicles to safely enter a roadway from a minor street or driveway for speeds along the main street ranging from 20 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour. If the line of sight for a given speed fails or falls short of the listed value, staff has made it a practice to recommend the installation of stop sign control. The California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the CAMUTCD, identifies other factors besides sight distance when determining the need for stop sign control. The recommended note number 3, highlighted in red on attachment number 2, adds these additional factors that should be included when deciding the need for stop sign control. The factors listed here summarize the proposed updated language to Plate 310, which is consistent with the CAMUTCD, where the city engineer can exercise greater discretion in applying engineering judgment in the need for stop sign control if the stopping site distance values in Plate 310 is not available. With the new language, factors such as collision history, sight distance from 8 feet rather than 40 feet from the intersection, traffic volume levels, proximity to nearby traffic generators, and other factors all come into play when determining the need for stop sign control. Staff feels confident that the new language provides greater latitude in determining the need for stop sign control rather than focusing on sight distance alone. So with that, the recommendation is in the staff report. We're open to hearing any feedback on the proposed recommended language updates, and happy to entertain any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mashiko. I just want to be clear that the action tonight that we're asked for is to receive the report. That's all. We're asked for feedback and input, but We're just asked to receive the report, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, does the commission have any questions for staff? Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Short and sweet. I think it's a great revision. I think you've addressed everything discussed by council in September. I know that I like more variations, more variety, more possibilities in which stop signs and the decision to place stop signs can be based on actually what is present at the uncontrolled intersection. I have no additional comments or recommendations other than, well done. Thanks.
Anyone have questions for staff? No. Okay. Is there any, I'm sorry, Commissioner Roscoe?
Yeah, just a real quick question. The language change at the top of the first paragraph where it says there shall being changed to there should. I was just curious what that adjustment, what the intention of that particular adjustment was for.
Okay, that's the one word on the first paragraph. Yeah,
That's
I think
correct, yeah.
I think that's more of an issue where we found that language was too restrictive. So it again, that's another situation where we soften the language a bit to give the engineer a little bit more judgment to determine whether or not if for example some situations might be a slight obstruction that not very critical. I mean, instead of it being absolute, we can sort of have a little bit more latitude in interpreting this plate.
Great, thank you.
Okay. No other questions? Are there any speakers on this agenda item?
No speakers or written comments.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? Okay, at this point, we'll close the item to public comments, open and discussion among the commission. Do we need further discussion or is there a motion? Commissioner Pletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion to, I guess we need the motion just to review the engineering report, receive public input, and provide comments to city staff's recommended updates to the City Council, City of Thousand Oaks Road Standards Plate 310, standard stopping sight distance requirements at intersections and driveways to be used for stop sign elevations at uncontrolled intersections. So essentially to receive the report.
Okay. Ms. Vasquez, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Mel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Roscoe,
Yes.
Chair Hayek,
Yes.
Commissioner Pletcher.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. I had just one more announcement. The Traffic Commission makes recommendations to the City Council, and interested parties may attend the City Council meeting and speak either for or against the recommendation of the Traffic Commission.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to number 9, status report of prior Traffic Commission recommendations.
I'm involved on both of these projects, so I can provide a brief update. But on item number 9 there's 2 projects that had been previously presented to the Traffic Commission. And the first one was on the November 27th Traffic Commission meeting. That's the 4th pedestrian crossing that's being constructed on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. That's between Live Oak and Oakview. It's pretty close to us here. And pretty well underway. That one features a kind of a more sophisticated pedestrian crossing and forces the pedestrians to walk longitudinally a little bit, so they don't just bury their head and walk across the street. They have to kind of like face the traffic for 10 or 15 feet and then turn again. So that's kind of a newer design that also helped because we were able to avoid some oak tree impacts. The best crossing location on one side of the street wasn't the exact same on the other side, and zigzagging helped accommodate that. So that project's well underway, and with Toro Construction, the contractor, and the website's listed in the staff report, which is toaks.co/TOBCPC. TO Boulevard Curbs and Pedestrian Crossings. That's why those acronym. But traffic control's up, and most of the heavy construction work will be done in the next few weeks, and then after that, it'll be just a matter of setting the poles and activating the push buttons and the electrical equipment for all that. Then the second item is the 2024 citywide paving project, which is going to start construction this spring. We opened bids on that project last week. That's going to be going to City Council next month to award the construction contract, roughly 50 miles of paving and $17 million. That includes some of the streets that we had presented to the Traffic Commission with some minor striping enhancements that we're making, and one of them also, just to refresh your memory, being Sunset Hills Boulevard, and adding a green bike lanes there across at the Urbs and Sunset, and a few other optimizations here and there throughout the city, and will not include the Los Padres restriping, which was what was finally decided on that one. Project website for that one is that's our evergreen website for all of our paving work of our biannual paving program, which is toaks.co/paving. So that's the update on the status report on prior Traffic Commission recommendations.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Number 10, commission referrals. There are none. Number 11, work program and commission schedule. Any questions for staff? There are none. Traffic Commission comments, discussion. Commissioner Pletcher?
Just want to thank city staff for coming out to the CVUSD's District Advisory Council earlier in the month to discuss the crossing guard program. I appreciate it. We saw some electeds there, as well as, I had a chance to be there as well and listen to the staff presentation. And I will tell you, as a follow-up, I've spoken to a lot of parents who were involved in being site reps for these schools, and it was incredibly eye-opening, because I don't think, again, there was a lot of understanding as to where their particular school sat with the crossing guard, and just a lack of knowledge. And it's good to see, though, overall, I want to say it's good to see the two agencies talking to one another, because I think that's going to be the key, not only for the program, but to build some of these bridges back that may have been a little bit degraded over the years. So thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, number 13, future meetings, consideration and possible cancellation of the regular Traffic Commission meeting scheduled for February 28, 2024. Per staff, there's nothing pressing on the agenda, and the things that are in progress require some more time. So they're looking at canceling the February 28, 2024 meeting. Any discussion?
You need a motion for the cancellation, right? I'm happy to make a motion to cancel the February 28th, 2024 Traffic Commission meeting as scheduled, currently scheduled.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to cancel the February 28th meeting. Any discussion? Ms. Vasquez, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Amell? Vice Chair Callahan?
Yes.
Commissioner Roscoe?
Yes.
Chair Hayek?
No.
Commissioner Pletcher?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 4-1.
Okay, we're now at 14, adjournment. Our next meeting is to be held at 6 p.m. on March 27, 2024 in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor. Meeting adjourned. Good night.